Hi, this is Angela Russell, host of the Black Oxygen podcast. So, I am a Black woman that loves Wisconsin. That sounds like an oxymoron, but it is absolutely true. And I know I'm not the only Black person that loves this state. Black Oxygen podcast is all about amplifying the Black voices all throughout Wisconsin and a little bit beyond. I hope that you'll check out the podcast soon and let me know what you think. Take care. Bye.
Hi, Amy Impellizzeri, host and creator of I Know How This Book Ends podcast, and I have a confession to make. The most fun part about doing this podcast is not the celebrity VIP author guest list, although that is really fabulous. The most fun part is when I hear an author guest say, "No one has ever asked me that before." I love that. On this podcast, we're trying to ask the unsanitized questions, the questions no one's ever heard before. I'm trying to surprise the author guests and hopefully surprise the listeners too. Tune in and see if I can surprise you. I Know How This Book Ends. Season 4 available now.
Hi, I'm Molly Fish.
I'm Jamie Anderson.
And this is Book Pop.
Welcome to our first live event. We have an audience today.
Woohoo! We also have a very special guest, Maggie Ginsberg.
Yay!
Hello. I'm trying not to say weird things into the microphone at this moment. I'm sitting here going, there's a microphone, there's a microphone, there's an audience, there's an audience, there's an audience.
Sorry, we're going to be super natural and
You
cash.
guys regretting this yet?
I've seen you live so many times and you're always absolutely amazing. So that is why we picked her for this live episode. We were like, no matter what we do, Maggie's got this.
Okay.
She's a
Famous
pro.
last words.
She's a pro. So yeah, in case you at home haven't noticed, this is our first live episode, like Jamie said. And, you know, just bear with us. We don't really know what's going to be different. Or
I
what we're
still
doing.
get to edit it. That's what's the same.
Oh, I thought we were not doing an unedited raw recording.
Well, you get the unedited raw
yeah.
recording. This is what's special about this.
For sure. So yeah, behind the scenes look here, we've got Jamie Anderson, also is the editor and producer of the podcast. Pete Benedict back there, you guys don't normally see or hear from. He is our tech guy. Oh, yeah, he's getting on camera there. We do have video recordings as well. It'll be on YouTube, but also edited.
Also edited, yes.
And that's mostly on us, so they don't have to worry about it.
You guys don't have to worry about it. Which we should have considered. Could have had like a audience camera.
How would you guys have felt about that? Yay or nay on the audience camera?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Had a feeling.
We're learning. We're just getting feedback. It's fine. Do you have a lot of on microphone experience?
I do now. I mean, that was my first thought. The first time they handed me a microphone when my book came out, and I was like, oh, I bet my kids are just terrified right now. Like,
what is she going to say?
Yeah. I just sat there like I meant it, where I was like, it just feels like so much power.
So book tour stuff, mostly being on mic, talking in front of people that way.
I always say, like, it's so strange to me that of all the people that they expect to become public speakers overnight, it's writers. Like, you know, I mean, it's been a weird journey, but I don't know, I'm getting there. And then I thought with this is like, okay, this is like when I come into the shop, we have the conversation, except now it'll be recorded. Because it's just always, what are you reading? What am I reading? What do you do?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
super casual.
Do you have this? Do you have that? So yeah.
Oh yeah.
I was so thrilled you invited me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for coming.
I mean, a whole season. How do you feel?
I mean, I feel like we did a whole season.
We feel every episode deep in our bones.
Okay, good.
No, it's been great. And we started it for the same reason. Like, this was just the conversations we were already having with each other all the time and with our customers in the store every day. And then we were like, okay, I'm having the same conversation. I'm describing the same books over and over again. I bet there's a way that's more efficient to get that information out to people who want to hear it. And that was how it started. So yeah, exactly. That's how we wanted to be authentic and casual and just like we're having a conversation with each other.
And share the conversations. We're having interesting conversations with customers every day. And like that knowledge is to be shared for sure. But I want to give Maggie a proper introduction. Maggie is a Wisconsin author. You have probably heard us gush about her book, Still True, which we both have read and love. She's also senior editor of Madison Magazine, and she was nice enough to give us a little blurb in the July issue.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, book pop.
Yes, we loved it.
Thank you.
And she's also here to give us a little sneak peek on some summer reads by Wisconsin authors. So we're really looking forward to the conversation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I want to correct the record and say a senior editor. I definitely have an editor above me who's, thank goodness.
Senior editor. You're not the senior editor?
Exactly.
Is that like on someone's card? Like I am the senior editor?
Yeah.
And yours has an A in front of it?
Yes. That's exactly
Got
that.
it. Yeah. Yeah. You got to get the business card, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
Good. How long have you been at Madison Magazine now?
Well, I've been writing for them forever. So nonfiction, even though Still True is a novel, it's my first fiction. I've been a nonfiction writer my whole career. And so I was writing for them forever, but then I came on staff in 2020 full-time as an editor, December 2020, which was basically when I was like, okay, like I need, health insurance. So I came on staff.
What happened in 2020 where maybe we all made decisions about health insurance differently?
It was bad. I was like, okay, job. And so one of the things that they've been so kind is they've allowed me to sort of bring more local literary coverage to the magazine. I don't get to do a ton, but I get to do a lot compared to what there used to be. So I do a monthly email newsletter called Sunday Reads on the last Sunday of every month, where I talk about books that are coming out by Wisconsin authors. And then I get to do online only. I get to do these web exclusive like author Q&As, one a month. I did once say, what about 2 a month? And they're like, no, 1 a month is good. And then once a year get to do kind of a big in-print book list in the summertime, and then had like a little one in the winter, but I don't know if that's for sure. And now I get to feature 1 a month as like a book of the month. So it's all very nice. I mean, it's not Maggie Magazine, right? Like they're I would love
should
to
be the
more.
ring.
But Madison Magazine, their coverage is about food and news and interesting people and things. So they whatever.
Maggie
have to
Magazine
do
really
that
has a
stuff
ring
too.
to it. I feel like you're onto something there. You could have like a little insert maybe.
Yeah. So I'm grateful that they let me do it, because there's just like really a lot going on with Wisconsin writers and Wisconsin publishers and plenty to keep me busy. I mean, I can't do it. I can't get to everybody. It's amazing to me how it's my job to pay attention to it, and I still miss so much all the time. So it's good. That's a good thing.
That's awesome. And once a month is still great in terms of like an increase in coverage of the Madison literary scene. You also famously wrote the Introduction to Lake City books
Oh, that's right.
back when we opened in April of 2023.
I mean, thank you for the sneak peek.
You're welcome. Thank you for writing such a great article.
I got to get in first. So
Yeah.
that was exciting for me. Book news. I'm on
Book
it.
news all over it.
Yeah.
Should we start with what we're reading?
Yeah. That's how we love to start all podcasts here at Book Pop. We like to talk about what we're reading.
And I have a lot to talk about, so maybe you should go first.
I know, I'm really, she already like spoiled something and I'm like mad about it already. Okay, I'll go first. Mine's kind of short and sweet. I recently read A Most Agreeable Murder. This is by Julia Seals. It is a historical, romantic, cozy mystery. So it is like, a Jane Austen spoof, I will say. It's almost like satire. It's cozy mystery in that it's not challenging, right? It's like cute, literally cozy. There's fireplaces. And it also almost has the Agatha Christie vibe of everybody's in a house. A murder happens. One of them did it. And then there's an inspector who's interviewing people in different rooms and you kind of have to see who's lying, right? So it's more like a character exploration than it is like action-packed thriller. But the twist is that there's a lot of fun twists, but there's a female investigator helping the actual male investigator who is not doing a great job, and she's doing a much better job despite being like a Victorian era women aren't supposed to be smart or like read the paper or know anything about murder. And she's like been secretly boning up on that stuff and is kind of slowly revealing like, ooh, I can actually really help with your investigation. And then they have cute romantic tension and chemistry as well, which helps. And like I said, there's lots of fun twists. One of her siblings might be a werewolf. There's like a side plot that is pretty questionable that doesn't really go anywhere other than I think it's just part of the satire of like, none of this makes sense anyway. Like it's all implausible. You might as well have a weird thing happening. So it was really cute. I remember I read it in like a day, and the next day I was like, I wish I was still reading that book. You know that feeling when you're like, I just want to still be reading that. I wish I was still in that world. It was really sweet that way, and I wish it had even been longer. I feel like it's something that's really seriesable. Like she could write a lot of these, and I would read them all. So again, that is A Most Agreeable Murder by Julia Seals. It's available now in paperback, so that's when I picked it up because it just came out in paperback this spring. And yeah, it just is a cozy, fun read. It's also, so one of our themes for this episode is summer reads. Maggie's going to be talking about her feature that comes out in the August issue of Madison Magazine about Wisconsin summer reads, Wisconsin author summer reads.
Coincidence that I've got a new issue dropping on, well, subscribers will have it this weekend. I don't know when this actually airs, but they'll be on newsstands by the end of July, and it's got the big book list in it. So I was really excited.
That's perfect.
Perfect
exactly.
timing, yeah.
Because this will come out next Friday.
Yes. Not this Friday.
Not next coming Friday, but next Friday.
Perfect.
Yep.
And so we wanted to also talk about some of our favorite summer reads. I feel like this is a great example of the kind of thing I like to read. It's escapist, it's fast, it's light, it twists, it turns, it's got some romance, it's got some, cozy mystery stuff. So that's a great example of what I like to read in the summer. Also a lot of fantasy, but I like to read fantasy all the time. So that's not really a summer thing for me.
No.
I'm always doing that. And I guess I should also mention just today I finished Priory of the Orange Tree, which I mentioned in a previous podcast I had started. It's like this big, thickness
What's the page count on it?
It was like 850.
Okay.
But they're big pages too. They're like, it was long. But it's a struggle to hold it.
Yeah, it's a giant
But I'm
book.
like committed to real paper books, as we know. So I was like, we're doing it. And once you get to the end, it's so lopsided, like heavy on one side and not the other. But I just finished that today before coming here. It was fantastic. Samantha Shannon, Priory of the Orange Tree, classic, perfect fiction, very like Game of Thrones-y world building in terms of like dragons, competing religions, totally epic world scale countries, rulers that all have to come together to defeat like an evil, I guess closer to Lord of the Rings type evil boss character. But it was so perfectly paced, perfectly like all the different character perspective they were just so easy to follow. I was eager to get back to each one of them, so it made it like frustrating to read because you're like, I can't pick which. It's flipping perspectives, but I want all of them at once. It was like just hook it up to my veins. I couldn't stop reading it. So loved it. Finally finished it. Happy to move on to some shorter reads. It did take me 10 days to read 850 pages.
Most of
Very impressive.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes, I read a lot.
And fast.
And I read pretty fast.
Yeah.
And I was really into it.
Wow. That's amazing that you can read, that you have time. Kind of the cobblers.
I make time.
Have no shoes, It's like,
We can talk about that because I'm curious to hear about your reading habits too later. The face she just made.
Yeah.
See, you have to buy a live ticket to see the classic face being made. But yeah, Jamie, what have you been reading?
All right. I got to adjust all these things.
It's hot take time from Jamie Anderson. That's what's about to happen. Hot take.
Okay. This is
We're gonna
also what
fight.
you don't get to see is me messing with everything during the podcast. Okay. Emily Henry. I love Emily Henry, and I started with Happy Place. And Happy Place was great. Then her most recent release is Funny Story, which we both talked about and loved. And then I read Beach Read, which must have come out before Happy Place.
It's one of her first ones.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? I'm looking at the audience because I got some
Well,
Emily.
number 2, our resident Emily Henry expert. Thank you, Lauren. I hated it.
Ugh.
He's got so many red flags.
Hold on. Hold for gasps. Okay, great. Continue.
He has too many red flags. I just don't even bother with him. I couldn't get over the red flags.
Okay. this might be.
And she's just going through too much. She shouldn't be worried about dating somebody right now. Her dad just died. And I finished it today. I'm a little...
She's hot. She's coming in hot.
Yeah.
I'm a little upset about it. It's not my favorite Emily Henry. And maybe that's because I started with the most recent, where she's like...
She has matured.
Perfected.
She's added better side
algorithm.
characters. I feel like there's a lot more world building in terms of like people's past and futures that is a little bit more believable and likable.
Yes.
In her later books.
Builds better together.
But didn't you love... Okay, I loved the setting of it. Those
Yes.
beach... Like the, adjacent beach houses. I loved the two writers. Maggie, have you read Emily Henry?
I have not.
That's
You're going to
fine.
find out that I read all the time, and it's never what anybody else is reading.
That's okay. We read enough of that stuff for
right.
everyone.
That's right.
It's good.
You can maybe you can pick up or decide which one you would want to start with.
Absolutely.
I highly suggest Funny Story, but maybe not Beach
Funny
Read.
Story is my favorite. This is about two writers, though. Do you want to give
It
a
is.
quick synopsis that's not
Books about writers.
riddled with hate?
Cynicism? Sorry about that. Yeah,
be
so
real.
she is a writer. She writes romance novels, and she inherits this house in Michigan. Is it Michigan?
Oh,
It's
really?
Michigan. Yeah.
That was like names.
Like on the lake, beautiful lake house. I wish we could Lauren a mic. She inherits this beach house from her dad, and it was like a secret house when he was cheating on her mom with somebody else.
right.
And she like is really resentful about this house and selling off the furniture and gonna sell the house. And then this guy who lives next door to her is also a writer and happens to be somebody that she went to college with. And they had like this one encounter that was steamy, but apparently he'd been pining for her for years.
All writers live next door to each other and pine for each other on the beach.
Okay, good to know. Getting insider information.
Yeah.
Heard it here.
Yeah. But then they like have this bet who can write. He writes lit fic that's like not so much happy endings, and she is all about the happy ending. So then they challenge each other to kind of write
Swap, right.
swap what they're writing. So she has to write something that's more cynical, and he has to write the happy ending. Then of course they're like teaching each other about each other's genre, and then they fall in love. But I don't know, he doesn't do it for me.
He's not your favorite Emily Henry lead guy.
Right.
But is it just the guy then? That's what you didn't like about it, is like it's not, and then you don't follow the romance part of it?
I mean, he's married. Red flag.
I forgot about that.
I read just like her dad.
Ooh.
Yeah. So it's kind of like this swap, like she's the other woman. Yeah. I don't know.
I just remember there being some really great tension, and I liked the like writer challenge part. I like a bet. I like forced proximity of the beach houses. I liked the cute little book group, which is how he started being like vulnerable.
Okay. His aunt and her wife, I love them.
See?
They were very adorable. And like the small town bookstore, there's things I liked about it. There's things I liked. I finished it.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah. Okay.
I finished it.
That's fair. I feel like personally attacked because I always told you this was my favorite Emily Henry before Funny
I
Story.
couldn't remember, to be fair. I couldn't remember.
That's fair.
I mean, it was
okay.
cute. I liked the premise. He could have been better.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. You're allowed to not like everything.
It doesn't happen very often when I
know
don't like something that
is that we recommend things to each other and we always like the same stuff. So I think this is one of our first times where we're like, what?
Yeah.
You didn't like
See,
a
like
book that I
Priority of
liked?
the Orange Tree, I want to read that, but it's 800 pages, and I'm probably not going to do that.
I don't know that you would like at Beach because of that reason.
Yeah. It would be a lot. Okay, but
You got your own fantasy situation going on, though, I
do.
can see.
Which I can't need to like look at the titles again because they're so long. The Serpent and the Wings of Night, which was the first one, and I talked about it on the last episode. I see you nodding, right? So good.
Carissa Broadbent.
Carissa Broadbent.
I can read it because I can see the side of the
Yeah.
book.
But it was like the perfect fantasy escapism. It like is a slow burn because the romance doesn't happen till like well into half of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like forbidden love, and it's so good. So I finished it in like 2 days.
It's a lot of reading for you. Well, I mean, like you like listen and you get through books really
true.
fast, but that's a lot of like physical reading for you.
Yeah. So say the title of the next one.
The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King by Carissa Broadbent.
Yeah. So that's the sequel
2,
of it.
yeah.
Yep. And I'm probably like 15 pages in and I'm already like broken because of it.
Was there a big cliffhanger so you had to start the second one right away?
Well, it wasn't so much as a cliffhanger as it was such a 180 at the end of it that you're like, where can this be going? And like lovers to enemies, and you're like, oh, but you really want them to be lovers. And
it was like enemies to lovers to enemies, right? Isn't that what you were saying?
Yes.
It's like complicated. And
it is an orphaned human that is taken into the home of like this king vampire. And then, yes, very fantasy.
already in.
Right? But she obviously has some kind of like special.
sold.
Yeah. But she obviously has like some kind of special powers. And then she enters into this tournament to the death with all these other vampires. And it wrecked me.
Oh my gosh, I'm very excited.
I'm excited to finish book 2.
Did you read a lot of like fantasy romance stuff before
I read no fantasy before I met
I feel
you.
like I've been
before I met Molly,
influenced.
Yes.
This is right up my alley.
Yes. You
Okay,
changed
great.
my life.
Are you next? Am I going to get you to
so
read
funny.
fantasy romance?
I don't know. This is my favorite thing about readers and books, right? Is like, it wrecked me. I'm devastated. I love it so
Well, when your
much.
life is like fun
I can't
and
wait to feel this awful again. So I'm gonna hurry up and read the next.
I cried all night.
Like, this is not how other conversations go. This is my favorite thing about books.
I mean, I'll say a
Right?
book I was wrecked by recently, Still True by Maggie Ginsberg.
Segue. No dragons or vampires. But
I know, none needed. None needed. We'll get into more gushing about Still True later because you can't shut us up about it. But we want to hear what you have been reading.
well, okay. So here's the thing. I have read the first 30 pages of everything in here. That's I feel like that's what happens with me is that I have to read. I read all the time. And my job is reading. I'm trying to write. I read and read and read. I'm often reading things, like I said, that aren't out yet or are, friends' manuscripts or, just all of these books. And there's just only so many hours in the day. And then what happens is I buy all the books. So I end up collecting all the books that I'm eventually going to read. So whatever everybody's talking about, like, I still haven't read Tomorrow. Those books that everybody's reading, I'm going to get to them in 10 years. So I'm literally right now reading Lonesome Dove. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's awesome. It's a little bit
Older though. Yeah. Okay.
But speaking of 850 pages.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. The sad thing about an 850 page book is there's like no like immediate payoff. Like, I am 125 pages into this book. It doesn't look like I've cracked the spine. And I don't like that feeling because I like to really feel like I'm accomplishing something, like, look at me go.
Fair.
Not happening with Lonesome Dove. But that's what I'm reading, other than all the other stuff I'm reading. And I'm loving it. Like, I wouldn't think that would be, I don't know what genre Lonesome Dove is, but
I feel like Western.
yeah, I guess.
Classic.
I just,
At this point.
Yeah.
Classic.
it's so annoying. Like, genre is something that's so important to the marketers and books, like
Tell me about it.
big publishing, but it doesn't do much of a service at all. It's why booksellers are so important, because you get to know the books, you get to know your customers, and you can say, I know you would really like this book. Outlander is the perfect example for me. I read Outlander 100 years ago when it
All of
came
them?
out. No, like the first
Okay.
one. But
There's a lot of Outlanders, is all I'm saying.
yeah, and this was, like way back then, before it was a whole thing. But I had never heard of it, and I was like, how have I not heard of this? Well, it was shelved in romance, which is fine. Nothing wrong with romance.
But you wouldn't go look there.
But it's also, historical fiction, and it's also time travel, and it's also
Totally.
just like lit fic, and it's
Yeah.
all these things. But I couldn't find it. I wouldn't have found it if a bookseller hadn't said, you should try this. So I don't know. I'm on my soapbox now about genre, but
I could talk about that all day. Do you know how hard it is to decide where to put things in a bookstore so that people will find them?
yes.
And I feel at this point, I just kind of go like, well, I'm doing what I want to do. Because I have like Murakami in 6 different sections, for example. And people will be like, well, I see you only have one Murakami book. I'm like, no. Let me show you the
That's
different.
kind of his fault too, because it's like the running book, and
That's what I think.
Yep.
I just read Tom Lake, but I listened to it. Meryl Streep reads it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was like balm on my brain.
I listened to it too.
I was like, that's how words are supposed to sound. Like every single breath is well placed, you know? So I don't know how she does that.
Raise your hand if you listen to Meryl Streep read Tom Lake.
So good, right?
Okay.
So good.
Yeah, she made me like love those characters that I probably wouldn't have liked them.
But weren't you like hearing? It was like I could hear Meryl Streep being Anne Patchett, being the main character. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
How is she doing that?
That's a good one. And that, I mean, listening counts as reading.
Oh,
We talk
absolutely.
about that all the time.
Yeah.
So you listen to audiobooks too?
I do. It's a multitasking thing for sure.
Well, there's only so many hours in the day.
gardening,
Exactly.
Yeah, cleaning.
Cleaning.
You can read with your eyes closed. The best until you fall asleep. So, yeah, I definitely listen as much as I read. I don't retain it as well when I listen.
Exactly.
I need the paper. I need to see it.
Well, then it's engaging two senses to me. Because I'm like reading it out loud in my head and I'm looking at it, and then it cuts everything else off a little bit more. And that's my big reason for not being able to listen. And it's why I can listen to like essays where I don't have to retain things like plot or character development as much. I can just like absorb a smaller bite-sized thing on a drive or while I'm cleaning or gardening, versus if I'm trying to keep track of, like, we'll talk about, there's multi-character, multi-perspective books when you're trying to listen and do other things, and you just get like lost.
Lose all the people.
And then you're like, I give up.
Yeah.
I tried. And then you don't know, like, is it the book or was it that I was listening to the book?
Yeah,
It's tricky.
it is.
I finish a book all the time listening to it, and I'm like, I want to go back and read it with a paper copy.
Yeah, and I do both. Like
Yeah.
I'll be reading it, and then I'm in the car, so I listen, and then I'm back home and I pick up where I left off. And
That's smart. I always like lose track unless it's the chapters are done by numbers. Sometimes they're not done by numbers, and then I'm just like all over the place.
So did you say you buy a lot of those books that are like current or happening, and you read 30 pages and you stop? So do you,
honey,
do
would you
wanna
like to testify? You want to take the stand?
talk about your giant library maybe? Or like, do you have tomorrow at home somewhere in a stack?
Yeah,
Like
I
the
have it.
biggest TBR of all time. It's just your
yes.
whole house.
It is. It 100% is.
Sounds kind of like a dream, although maybe
Yeah.
or a nightmare.
Yeah, I just moved in with my husband for the first time in 10 years. We had never lived together. And I just moved all of my books, and it was 54 grocery bags that were numbered, you know, to keep them in order. And all those Subaru trips and then up the stairs and up the other stairs and then down. Yeah. Yes, I have a wall of books. And actually the bookcases are from the Prairie Bookshop, RIP, where I worked for many years. There was an independent bookstore in Mount Horeb that closed before the renaissance of
That's right. Yeah.
bookstores. So I worked there for 5 years, 4 hours a week, 40% discount.
Oh yeah. Don't tell
It's like that
40%. I know Jamie's gonna.
I mean, this was, you know,
My staff is gonna revolt. 40% discount.
it's like the early 2000s.
See, but then they went out of business.
They went out of business.
Because Maggie bought all of the books at like
And then
less
I
than
bought the
cost.
bookcases. So those,
And literally,
no, I did.
you
So those-
drove them out of business to
Yes.
take the cases. I see what's happening.
Yes.
So
I
you
got
don't want
four
that to
of their
happen.
that's
bookcases,
true.
and they are now in my house holding on my books. And I have culled the collection many times because I've moved a bunch of times. And because I've gotten real a bunch of times, and getting real is what I do after my husband and I have an argument. So get real, Maggie, and then I do, and then I, you know.
Getting real. I'm getting rid of a whole bag of books.
Yeah.
Only
So I
53
do.
left.
But they come back.
Yeah, I know.
It's
Yeah.
just like so. But and I also now live across the street from the library, which is so stupid. So I'm always telling them, I'm like, if you guys need anything, come on over.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. But I don't know. I think of it as art. It moves me and comforts me in the same way that good art does. I think of it as interior design, even though it's not, it's kind of a little messy, but still. And I had someone say to me a long time ago that if you love books and if you want to be a member of the literary community, then you need to think of book buying as philanthropy. And that was all I needed to hear.
Yeah, no kidding.
Don't have to tell me twice.
Sorry, no more
authors.
guilt. So yes, I buy a lot of books. I read about 20% of them.
I love that.
Totally supporter.
I'm also a peddler. I'm not a biased opinion
None.
in any sense of the word.
There's also a Japanese word that I can't pronounce or remember, but it's the joy of surrounding yourself with books, like a word that we don't have in the English language, but it means just the joy of surrounding yourself with books.
Yeah.
Not reading them, not writing them, just being with them.
Yeah. Even my like earliest memories at the, as a kid are like sideways. Like I'm lying on the floor at the library, like it's the books on the side. It's just like being around and being comforted by the books. I don't know what it is.
It's very valid.
Thank you.
Anytime. Come here for validation on buying books anytime.
Well, we also talk about how buying books and reading books are two separate hobbies. And sometimes you can do one of them and you can't really make time to do the second part of that transaction.
Struggle is real.
Yeah, the struggle is real.
Tell us a little bit about your writing process. Now, you published Still True in, was it 2021?
2022.
2022,
September
okay.
2022.
You should know that.
I know, I
'cause
should.
You used to work at UW Press.
Yeah, University of Wisconsin Press.
I panicked a little bit. I was like, what was it again?
They offered the contract in January of 2021.
See, that's where you were involved in the 2021.
I was in rights, so that was definitely me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was-
Totally understandable.
Yep.
so it's a long, long process. I wrote
is.
the first draft of that book in 2017.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I got an amazing agent a week later, and I was like, this is so easy. I don't know why no one told me. This is great. And
This book will be out in 6 months.
Absolutely. I was like, I can do this 4 times a year, but probably only 3 times a year if I want like any downtime. And it was 5 years before I held that book in my hand.
Yeah.
After, thinking I'd made it. So yeah, it's a long process. I wrote it all between the hours of 5 and 7 a.m. So that is when I do my fiction writing, because then I go to my job or my life or whatever. I have all kinds of kids and pets and the occasional husband, and, things going on.
Right.
Wow.
So yeah, that's when I write.
Would you say you're a morning person then? Like you pop out of bed at 5 or at 4:30, cup of coffee, or like shower, or like just open the laptop and start? Or
Yeah.
wow.
The coffee, there's something about, I think it all started before Still True, before I knew I was going to write a book. I was a morning person like that. I was getting up really early, and we would usually just have coffee and talk. But then when I started writing, it was like the best time to do that, because nobody needs anything from you. Even the animals stayed asleep. The kids stay asleep. There aren't work emails. If there are, you're allowed to ignore them. It's 5 a.m. It's
because you're
fine.
supposed to be asleep.
Yeah. Well,
It's just me. I can't talk to anyone before 9 a.m.
when I was when you
I
were
refuse.
a kid, would they ask you like, what superpower would you like? I always chose freezing time. And to this day, that's what I would want. And I think that's what I love about 5 to 7 a.m. is it's like, it feels like time is frozen and I can just have the world to myself and nobody's bugging me and I can do whatever I want.
Great point.
It's something
I get that.
about that. I suppose people can do that late at night too, but I'm just a mess after pretty much 4:30 p.m. So my brain just melts
Yeah,
out
I
my
mean, it's
ear.
all about like circadian rhythms too and how your body works. So that's fascinating.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to write Still True?
Well, it was, that first draft was 3 months, and then I did some revisions with that agent, and basically over the next
3 months.
3 years.
Just 3 months?
Yes. And what I learned is that that's how you should do a first draft. Because then I tried to write another book where I took much longer. And what happens if you take a really long time to find out even what the story is that you're telling in that first draft, you change. And what you care about changes, what you're interested in changes. And so I didn't have time to change or second guess or think at all when I was drafting the first draft of Still True. It was just like I didn't know if I could do it. I'd never written fiction before. I was like, I'm just going to get this story out. I've since learned that in writing other things that that's the way to go. It's not going to be the version that gets published. Right? So there
Get
were
the
many
draft out.
versions from there. The basic story basically stayed the same, but the book changed a lot. And I'm glad for it. Every time it didn't sell, every time it was, there was some problem I needed to solve. It got better. It became a better book. I'm really glad that's not the version that was published, but that was fine because I was working with this very clear, like clearly shaped lump of clay. And man, when you instead do what I do like the one that I just finished and take 5 years. So I started writing the one that I just finished. I started writing while Still True was out on submission back in 2017. And I didn't get a first draft until January 2023. So that was like math it quick. 17.
Oh, we're words people.
5.
No math.
5 years.
5 years, 6 years. And I'm not saying I was writing that whole time at all, but that's a long time to get to that first draft where you even go. And this is what happened to me. I went, okay, I did it and I don't like it. I'm going to tear it apart. Well, that's a lot of years. And I had changed a lot. So kind of the central story question that I was obsessed with in 2017, I just didn't care about in 2023. And so I really had to tear it apart and go back to like, what am I really trying to get at with this story? And that was really a challenge. So definitely write fast, write that first draft fast, figure out what it is you're writing. Somebody famous said that, that the first draft is to tell yourself the story and the second draft is to tell somebody else the story or whatever. Someone in here knows who said that. What was it?
Stephen King.
Stephen King. Hi, Sean. There's a writer right there. Yeah. And so that is what I learned. And then I've tried to implement it and can't seem to do it. So maybe erase all that and like every book is different and every book is its own journey and it just is how it is and quit judging everything, Maggie.
Depends on where you are. You thought that was going to be the second book of 2715 of the 3 that you wrote that year.
That was going to be when I was going to go on vacation with Stephen King.
Yeah, exactly.
Break and left in a fourth book.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it probably is different every time.
Yeah, I think it must be, right? I mean, I think, I don't know. It's really, there's still something very mysterious about it to me, and that's a good thing, I think. So who knows how it all works? Who knows what my process is? But if I don't show up, and like touch the work in some way every day, then a year goes by and the book's still not written. So,
Yeah.
I think you just have to trust it and just keep showing up.
Did you end up having to carve out more than that 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. in order to kind of take it home?
No, in fact, there were times that I had more time, like say a day off from work or a writing retreat or something, and I found it very difficult. I've read that book by Cal Newport, I think it's called Deep Focus, and talks about how you have sort of, like elite musicians or just like people across all different kinds of things. They talk about this 2 to 3 hours a day that they can do this deep focus, and then after that, they're kind of out of it. And how every time you come out of deep focus, there's something called residual distraction. It takes like 20 minutes to get back into. So like if you pick up your phone to scroll it, it's going to be 20 minutes before you can get back to that place. I really took that to heart. So I just protected that 2-hour window. And then, when I had more opportunity to write, I often couldn't. That's drafting, revising and stuff, and really kind of getting into the zone that I can
Do more day to day. Yeah.
Like when I was finishing this last one, that was like all day, every day, all I could think about. And then I couldn't read.
Yeah. What's it like reading when you're writing?
Well, I have to read other things. I can't read things that are like what I'm writing. So I can't really read the stuff I want to read in that way. So it's more like reading nonfiction, reading a lot of things that get me in that headspace. Honestly, I wonder if there's kind of an osmosis thing too, because I'll just like make my stack of books that I think are like of the vibe. So this third book that I'm working on, I have this stack next to my computer. It's all nonfiction, and it's all just like, I don't even want to say what, but but just books that if I pick it up and read for 20 minutes, it's just going to go in that like compost place. But I'm not necessarily like purposely, intentionally drawing a connection between the two.
So you're now starting over and working on book 3. Is that where you're at in the process? Can you give us any hints about book 2?
Well, I mean, I don't have a contract yet, so it doesn't exist for you to read yet, but it is out on submission right now. My agent is out with it 3 days, 4 days on submission. So that's a very mysterious, long process, but I'll cross all your things for me. So who knows? But yeah, no, it's. Are you asking me what it's about?
I don't know. Whatever you're willing to share. We would all be interested in whatever you're willing to share.
It's definitely. I mean, I think what's still true. I think my thing is like people in small towns being messy, I guess, is my beat. So it's like that. It's a little bit messier, maybe. So
That's a good beat.
Yeah.
it's kind of what happens when in this small lake resort town, when a man dies and the married man dies, and the 25-year-old affair partner that nobody knew about shows up at the funeral, and it's told from the rotating perspective of her and the wife. Ooh. And it's called What a Mess You Left. So
Oh my God, I'm so excited.
Your titling is great.
I'm superstitious, but that's funny because still true. They didn't like the title.
They didn't like that at all.
But then they did. Then they kept it. So they just had to.
I still think about all the time, like the phrasing around when you actually hit that phrase in the book towards the end of Still True and what that meant, and the bawling and the. But I mean, so we aren't talking about Still True a lot because we have talked about it on the podcast multiple times because we are big fans. Yeah. But I feel like we should talk about it with Maggie a little bit.
That's true. Well, okay, so it had its own meaning to us. What did it mean to you?
The title.
The title, writing it, the story.
What did it mean to me? That's fascinating. I didn't plan to write something so true. I thought, okay, I get to do fiction now. And I've only ever written nonfiction. And so I'm going to make everything up. And how delusional that was is like super clear to me now with hindsight. But I really was delusional in the moment. I didn't know it was early in the morning. It was dark. It was winter. I didn't know if anyone would ever read it. And I was just putting, 40 years of life into it. And I had these characters. I could see them clearly. They became like real people to me. And I really thought I was making it all up. And then it came out and I started to talk about it and do book events about it. And it just got clearer and clearer and clearer that I was in huge trouble and that I had just written a lot of the story I like to tell about that is that when one of my best friends read the manuscript before it was published, she called and she said, I feel like I just read something really private.
Yeah.
And I was like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? This is fiction. Isn't this fun? I made it up. She goes, yeah, no. And she goes, I get that you are none of these characters and you are all of these characters. Yeah. And I was like,
I mean, I think authenticity and putting yourself into something is the best way you can be vulnerable, though, and let people connect with that piece of art and therefore you.
Absolutely.
At the same time. And that is why we read it and are getting chills, even not knowing as much about your personal life. We feel like we know you just the same. Like that vulnerability shows so strongly. And it's such a beautiful setting and all those characters. And they're also so strong and funny and well-defined. And I also thought they were real people. I remember thinking that too.
Yeah.
And also looking for you and trying to be like, ooh, I know this little tidbit, and like you
didn't have to look very far.
Yeah. Well, I loved it. It's just, if anyone hasn't read Still True by Maggie Ginsberg yet, we sell out of it all the time because we talk about it and recommend it to everyone. And
it's
famously,
an easy hand sell.
Really slow to ship. So I never have enough copies.
Thank you.
It's really fantastic.
Good about supporting Wisconsin authors. And I want to be diplomatic here, so I want to be careful. But you do it in a way that feels like a bonus thing. Feels like you mean it. It feels like you think that it's a good thing.
We feel very lucky.
100% mean it.
I mean, the way that you showcase books by Wisconsin authors and they're all together, even, the New York Times bestsellers are next to my book, that it's I just really appreciate that. So, and I love that it lives forever on your staff picks.
It's not going anywhere.
We fight about it. It goes between ours. Yeah.
Every year I'm coming in to go, is that still there?
Molly moved it to her shelf and I was like, why'd you do that?
See, we literally fight about it. I told you. Well, we can't wait for book 2 because we will, I'm sure, love that one as well.
Thank you. Fingers crossed.
And I feel like this is a good transition into talking about other Wisconsin authors. And we will hopefully have many of the books you mentioned. I can hopefully, you'll say a book and then I'll be like, do we have it?
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
We'll get it.
It'd be like a little pop quiz for us if we have all these.
I mean, that's the thing is like, I don't want to say what's on the list because
that's true. They have to read the article.
You need to go find Madison Magazine, the August issue of Madison Magazine.
I'm sure they all will.
And you can subscribe. But no, it's hard. It's actually really hard. In print, you work really far in advance. And then obviously books do that too. And it can be really hard to get everything. I focused on books that came out from between March and September. So books that aren't quite out yet and some that have been out a few months. There's a little something for everybody. There's nonfiction and fiction and poetry and children's books. There's a single graphic memoir, which is interesting. So I'll tell you, Jessie Lee Kercheval, who started the MFA program at UW-Madison, which is one of the best there is, wonderful writer. But in the pandemic, she started doodling, like drawing illustrations. She suddenly became a visual artist and she just makes these amazing illustrations. And now she has a graphic memoir coming out called French Girl.
Exciting.
It's so cool. Yeah. A book that absolutely devastated me, only not fiction, just devastated me, is coming out this week. It's called The Lucky Ones, and it's by Zara Chowdhury, and she also she's a lecturer at a languages lecturer at UW-Madison, and it is about this period of her life 22 years ago in India, where she's from, where her family was in this 3-month lockdown in their apartment as this anti-Muslim violence raged around them and thousands of people died. And she writes so beautifully. Like, she's just such a powerful, beautiful writer. And then the story is also just so intense. And I learned a lot, but also it's very personal. Like, she writes about family violence and family dynamics so that and she really draws that connection in a way I don't see that often between like societal violence and family violence, and how it starts at our dinner tables, the war starts at our dinner tables. And so that book, just so tough. I read a middle grade book.
Laura Bird. I was going to say.
Yeah, Laura Ann Bird wrote a book in 2022 called Crossing the Pressure Line. And in it is a character who's kind of a bully or, some bad behavior named Jack. And she has a book coming out in September called Marvelous Jackson, and it's his story. And it was really neat to see. And my niece, I've bought her book twice, the first one, but I keep giving it away, and my niece has it. She devoured that first book. So I'm being like the exciting aunt and sending her the book that's not even out yet.
Yeah,
so cool.
She's gonna have it before all of her friends. But that was really lovely. Obviously, Anne Garvin
Bummer
has Bummer Camp coming out, and she's got that. I know she was on your show talking about it. She's got this she's got this launch event planned in August that's a weekend at this camp, and I'm one of the
Are you going?
I'm one of the camp counselors or whatever. I don't know. She sent me a merit badge. I don't know what's happening. I'm
going to be there on Saturday. I'm going to sell books.
Are?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I'll make sure I have
to weasel my way into it.
I know. We're going to try. I'm trying to get Jamie to come too. But we're going to come sell books to the campers.
That's so cool. She really honestly kind of gave me very little information. She was just like, it's going to be, we're going to do crafts, but not if you don't want to. And we're going to wear yoga pants, and you can, you get a badge for not going on the hike, and it's going to be that, and she's like, will you come? I'm like, I'm in. Just whatever, I'm in.
It's a good Anne Garvin impression. If you guys haven't listened to that episode, that's like a really good impression. But also go back and listen to the Anne Garvin episode.
Is with utter love.
Oh,
Anne
yes.
Garvin
Absolutely.
is one of my favorite people, and honestly, one of the most generous writers that I know. She's she is a mentor to me, and she has been just integral in everything I've done. So I'm like, yeah, okay, Bummer Camp, I'm there.
Bummer Camp, yeah. You want me to be a camp counselor?
Yeah.
Sleep in a bunk?
It's going to be cool. She said it's sold out.
Yeah. I was so excited when I saw it sold out.
Mm-hmm.
No.
She's literally putting a book-themed summer camp weekend together for...
But I love her books, and
her release.
She's on this one a year
Yeah.
track right now. So yeah, that one's coming out. And there are books that aren't even on the list because they're coming out after September that I'm excited about. Like there are a couple in October. There are a couple in February that are, I mean, Krista Clancy's new book, Snowbirds, is coming out in February. Nick Butler's new book, The 40-Year Kiss, is coming out in February. Nicholas Butler, who wrote one of my favorite books ever, Shotgun Love Songs, by the way, is writing a sequel to Shotgun Love Songs. And I don't know that there's a contract or a date yet, but he plans to finish it by the end of the year. So any Nick Butler fans out there, it picks up 10 years after Shotgun Love Songs.
That is awesome.
I know.
That's great. I'm really excited about Christy Clancy's and Nick Butler's. February is going to be a big month. After
So
January.
even the books that I can't fit on the list.
Yeah.
It's only like 36 titles on the list, but then you can watch MadisonMagazine.com for my author Q&As. You can sign up for the Sunday Reads newsletter. There's someone in this room who has a book on the list, but I don't want to say that we're looking at you.
They're not looking at us.
So I mean, it's
Cool. Well, we can't wait. Oh yeah, I'm not allowed to look at this.
no, it's just my little.
She already just said.
Oh, one book I wanted to mention that people might not know about is, so Brandon Taylor. So he is part of this new imprint. He's an acquiring editor for Unnamed Press. And so he acquired a book that's coming out called Blue Graffiti by Callahan Skogman, who is the Netflix actor guy. Shadow and Bone, I think, is the name of the show. And he's an actor on there, but he's a Wisconsin guy. And
Really?
That's set in Wisconsin. Oh, yeah.
That's
I just don't even want to
this
say.
summer,
There's
this
more-
fall?
Yeah, this summer.
This summer?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I can't wait till this comes out. I'm going to be like ordering books off of Maggie's list. Like, all right, make sure I have all of these.
I don't want to say what's on here, but there's
That's okay. We are all looking forward to it.
Yeah, everybody gets the
picture books
August
and middle
issue
grade
of Madison Magazine.
YA books.
Yep.
What did you
Yay. No, I didn't see anything. I wasn't looking. I can't see that far.
Okay, should we finish off with our rapid
Yes.
fire quiz?
Well, and as usual, we're running over time, and sorry, everyone, but you should have expected it. It's because it's our first live episode that we didn't expect it, but we run over every time. Right, Pete? That's all he's allowed to say contractually.
Yep.
But we have a fun game. So because this is our season 1 finale, we wanted to go back through all the topics we covered, at least some of the big topics we covered, and get Maggie's perspective on them, since you've heard us talk about these topics all ad nauseum. But we wanted to turn it on her and kind of give her just like a quick topic, and then she can give us a quick answer. So I feel like a good example, our first episode ever was about 5-star reads. We talked a lot about what our 5-star reads are. So we want to get from Maggie a 5-star read that she recommends, that she thinks about all the time. When someone's like, what's your favorite book? The most annoying of questions. What is something that comes to mind? Rapid fire lightning round.
So I kind of give everything 5 stars.
Everything you finish, you give 5
if you
stars?
finish it.
Like, you're never going to hear me say a bad thing about any book ever.
That's nice.
It's not even just that. Like, I just really think that people need to be like, wow, books are miracles. So, because man, you just can't be on this side of things and not think that, because it's just.
That's very generous opinion.
Anyway, but I have read things I've loved lately. I know you guys talked about on the show, you talked about Yellowface. I burned through Yellowface.
Right?
Absolutely loved that. I don't like to, give actual stars, but I do like it when I just get swept away, because that's how it used to be when I was a kid. And It's harder now. My attention span is shorter. It's just harder to get to that place. I was swept away by Yellowface. I was swept away by Writers and Lovers, Lily King. I was swept away by Migrations by Charlotte something. I read Barbara Kingsolver's new one.
Those are great. Those are good. And I think that sounds like that answers my other question, is what do you consider a 5-star read? Because we all kind of have different versions of that. But you're looking for that sweep me away feeling.
It's an interesting question, right? Like, yes, I want it to be effortless and exciting. There's sort of like an energetic feel, right? Where it's just like you're being swept away by the story. And I think that can happen. That's not necessarily the most literary thing, or the most everybody else's 5 stars, or the one that won this award or that award. Like, whatever that book is, when you feel it, like that's awesome.
Totally.
That's why I don't like to give stars to books. And I also don't ever think that anything that anyone is reading is dumb. Like, you know, I'm just like, if you can get lost in a book, like that is the ultimate way to live. So
Same.
Absolutely. What about a
it's a
favorite?
very speed round of me, is it?
I know.
That's
Well,
okay.
that
We
was our fault
really love
too.
listening to you talk, so we're like never going to cut you off.
A favorite book adaptation.
I like it when they do those, all the ones that Nicole Kidman is in. I'm always watching those limited TV series.
Big Little Lies.
Big Little Lies. Or
like
The Sympathizer. Is that the other one?
There's something I'm watching now about a bunch of people microdosing. I can't think of. I think it was a
Nine Perfect Strangers.
Yes, I'm watching that because I love how every episode's like a chapter, and you can learn a lot about story with just the hookiness of it all.
Oh, yeah.
Story structure.
And I think that's the same author as Big Little Lies, right? Leanne Moriarty.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, good one.
Yeah.
I like to do those.
Do you have a favorite children's book from when you were a child or that you read to your kids?
I used to sneak into the adult section at the library, so it's hard to think of the kid books, but I read a lot of S.E. Hinton long before I should have. I read a lot of Judy Blume, but the ones she would write for the grown-ups. And I read all those like Christopher Pike and like anything that I suspected was off limits, I was really excited about. And then I bought all of those books for my kids. Like I bought the actual versions. Like I scoured the internet, like Abe Books and all those like rare collections to buy the actual editions of all of my favorite books and made a whole bookshelf while I was pregnant with my first.
It's a fun project that they might never read, but
my first is 25 almost, and she has never read them. They they didn't read any of those books I collected. They're still at their dad's, so whatever.
Celebrity book clubs. Do you follow any of them?
I don't follow, but
does it affect you in a bookstore if it says like Oprah pick or read with Jenna? Do you go like, oh, or do you just are like whatever?
those are so fascinating. I mean, I think they're getting more people reading. They make an unbelievable difference in book sales, which means that books get noticed. And I think what people don't realize about those is that they're decided like a year before the book even comes out.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's you know, like if a publisher is making a, I mean, I don't want to be on record for this. I don't actually know what I'm talking about. But that is my understanding, is that, you know, say a publisher is making a book deal, like they are taking that unvarnished manuscript and like trying to get it to the people that make these decisions like a year in advance. So anything that's that sort of like manufactured, I'm a little suspicious of. Not that those aren't awesome books, because they are. Like to get to that level, you have to be, you know, but it's just all of publishing. Again, it goes back to my earlier soapbox about all of publishing is designed to like game it, you know, and to put certain books in front of you so that you're seeing the same books all the time. And that's fine. Again, those are great books, because it's so hard to break through. But I very much appreciate the librarians and the booksellers that are actually hand selling, connecting
Stuff they like and their community is gonna like.
community
Right.
that they know.
Yeah.
That's a really, really important thing that needs to never go away.
And we appreciate, I mean, I like that those big book clubs, they put books on a platform and keep it in like as pop culture and in the discussion.
Get people excited about books, get people posting about books.
But you're right that then there's the micro level, right? The community level of, okay, but maybe there's other stuff that we can help surface.
It's critical.
Yeah, for sure.
What you do is important.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, here's the tough question. Paperback or hardcover?
You know, I think paperback.
Ooh, why? I want receipts.
I'm very weak, and it's just like if you've ever dropped a hardcover, you know,
That's a great reason.
out the paperback. It's like
Okay, good reason. I like
Yeah,
it.
no kidding. Show of hands, paperbacks?
Hardcovers?
okay, that's like half an hour.
Oh, yeah.
No opinion, or is there any kind of like
No
don't
opinion,
care?
okay,
All right, there's
yeah.
a couple of those. It seems like paperback won though, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And there are a lot of books now that are straight to paperback.
That's
Yeah.
true.
That's true. You would know better, but like I think that's kind of just more economical anyway.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you use a book tracking app?
I have like 7 of them that I
I feel like it defeats the purpose.
Yeah. And then like I made a New Year's resolution to go analog and show no one what I was actually reading. And like I made this little paper one, this little mini one.
Yeah.
Like little pictures of the books, and I did it for like a month and a half and then stopped.
It's like a collage scrapbook experiment kind of.
Which is really cute. But I don't know. I've started to feel, despite everything we've said here today, I've started to feel a little bit more private about what I'm reading, because it's just, I don't want it to ever feel like a job or a chore or marketing or anything, you know, like again, it goes back to that wanting to get swept away. I want to just kind of have this like thing, you know, that's mine, and it isn't about rating it and reviewing it and all of that. So
well, and we struggle with that too, because there is a lot of pressure to be reading a lot and to be able to recommend and to be reading the newest thing, because everyone's like, have you read this? Have you read this? Have you read this? Can you recommend it to me? And you know, I'm only going to read so many books in a year, and for me that's probably like 60
and
tops. So I'm like,
they're so subjective.
Yeah.
too.
Well,
Like, it's just-
exactly,
you can't
exactly.
really say this is a good book. What I love isn't going to be what you love.
well, and that's why I let myself read like Priory of the Orange Tree, even though it's like a 10-year-old giant fantasy that I can recommend to like 3 total people.
that's
But like I really loved it and I really want to read it, and I was like, I let myself do that, and then I still pepper in things that I feel like I should read or that I want to know. You know, if it's really big or it's our bestseller, I'm like, well, I want to be able to talk to people about this. So I feel like it's about a balance for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, whenever we have a guest, it's so hard to end it.
It is so hard to end it, but at least
we
we're not
probably
really
should.
ending this time, because we're gonna do a Q&A and then let
That's
the
true.
audience talk and ask questions of
Okay.
Maggie or us or whatever you guys want to chat about. We're gonna hook up a separate mic, however. So signing off.
No pressure, but it's your turn.
Yes, the lady up front.
Hi. I had a question about, you had mentioned in your book that the first version was not the version that got published, and that each time it didn't sell, you went back to the drawing board and kind of like edited it. I'm curious to know what that process was like. How did you know what to change?
Well, in that case, great question. Thank you. In that case, it was always what someone else was saying, right? So it was, I don't think that a 10-year-old boy would say that, or I don't think that, you know, I don't understand why she did what she did, or what's missing for me in this scene is this. So it was always about problem solving. The initial story really didn't change, the plot, like from start to finish of what came out in those first 3 months. But I always say that it didn't change like this, but it changed like this. So it got deeper, it got thicker, it got stronger connective tissue. It started to make more sense. Every time I had to solve a problem, like, why would this person say that? It got better. So it was never really the plot, or like going back to square one and rewriting it. It was never like that. It was just like, the more I got to know those characters and think of them as real people and really try to understand why they were doing what they were doing, the better the book got.
Who else?
How much back and forth was there? Like, how many times are you going back and forth? Do you just get a big, huge pile, here's all the notes, or is it a more dynamic, immediate, here's a paragraph?
Yeah.
I'm curious about that process.
I mean, there wasn't it really depends who you're asking. So like when I got my agent, she gave notes about things that she thought I should change. And so I did a version based on that. And then when she went out to potential publishers, whenever we would get any feedback, you know, like a beautiful rejection, we would consider some of that, right? And then when it was like a year and she hadn't sold it, it was like, well, maybe we should ask an editor to read it and see if there's something we're missing. And then it was like, what does that person say? And then when the process of publishing with UW Press, they treat their novels the same as all of their books. And so they do like external peer review and faculty committee vote and all this stuff when they're deciding. So there were peer review reports that came back. And then it was like, do you want to incorporate any of their suggestions? And then it was, you know, when they acquired it, it was like, we think maybe this or that, but you don't have to, but it's your, you know, or again, that the longer it went on, the more real the book was, the harder it was to sort of change things. So it was really more subtle things like buffing it, you know, it was like, well, are you sure that this is how that would go? And then it's sort of like trying to solve maybe spending a month or two trying to solve certain story problems. I always try to talk about it without spoilers, but for people who have read it, I can be really specific about stuff that changed, because there was some kind of big stuff that changed, but always as a result of trying to solve a problem, not as a result of trying to change the plot, if that makes sense. So it can be a lot. And then it can be not so much. Like it just depends, I think, with each book. But, agents, editors, readers all have an influence, I think.
Does anybody have a favorite summer read that they want to share?
Is there a single book in the world we didn't mention tonight?
All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker. Absolutely #1 book of the year.
Can you say it again? Sorry.
All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker. It just came out.
Was that one of the picks, like the Reese pick?
It was a Jenna pick.
Jenna pick? Okay.
Yep. So it's kind of crime fiction, but also coming of age, but also epic over like a long period of time. It's kind of one of those genre bending, like hard to place in the bookstore. It starts with a young boy and young girl and their friendship, but there's a missing person. There's a serial killer. There's a missing person mystery kind of throughout. One of the kids gets captured, and then it's the fallout of the trauma throughout their lives. It is gorgeously written, and the chapters are like Cheeto chapters. They're like a couple pages.
Love that.
So there's like hundreds of chapters, but they're quick.
Yeah.
Cheeto chapters. I'm stealing.
Yeah, no kidding. That's great.
There's a lot of weaknesses, but
Yeah.
So at the beginning of the summer, I read The Guest List by Lucy Foley, and I loved that. That was a nice, really intense mystery where it takes place over 2 days, and it jumps back and forth a little bit between the 2 days, and it's the wedding of this really popular magazine editor, and there's just a lot of different characters, and they all have their own POV, giving you a little bit more of the story in each chapter, and they're also very quick Cheeto chapters.
Nice.
Which it was very quick to read through them, and you can guess who you think kind of was the propelling person who did it, and then it's not at all what you thought, but at the same time you're still like, I could see them doing it still. And that was a really, really good read. And then also just for the summer, that was like 400 pages, and I didn't know that was a part of a series, but that's kind of like standalone, but it was the third one. That was a really good romance, but also she developed her female main character so much, and she had so much going on besides just meeting this guy, because she goes to Minnesota to do a 3-month nursing stay to meet up with this guy so they can break this curse that they both date someone, and whoever they date ends up finding whoever they fall in love with after. But there's so much more to it than just that. And that was also a really good summer read.
do you recommend reading those in the series?
I haven't read the series. I read that book and then I found out it was a series, but it's kind of like more intertwined than the Emily Henry universe.
Yeah.
So they're a lot closer. Like Emily Henry, it's like they mentioned, like in Funny Story, the bookshop they go to is that his aunts and the wife. So that's how I remembered they're in Michigan because they don't say it outright.
Never clicked for me.
Because I was waiting for the point of them to be like, for her to kind of put in your face like, oh, this is what she did. Because in Book Lovers, she had January's book and so on and so forth.
See, this is why we love talking to customers about books, is because then we're like, really? I read all those books. Amazing. Anyone else want to talk about a favorite summer read?
I'll also just say with Abby Jimenez, I would read those books in order because in Just for This Summer, there's lots of Easter eggs, one that even made my jaw drop. Yeah, I would definitely recommend. And then I also just finished This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune, her newest. It was just kind of the romance that had me like giggling and kicking my feet. Really good. And it's just best friend's brother trope. Takes place in Canada, Prince Edward Island. So the setting's really great. And definitely great for the summer and beach read.
Good recommendation. That Carly Fortune, I think I've been eyeing for like my Take Up North book. So good to know. Okay, I'm gonna sneak behind you.
Okay, so I love a complicated female lead and an unreliable narrator. So The Guest by Emma Cline is super good. It's in like the East Coast, and this woman who's running from something, you don't really know the whole story, and she's kind of got to insert herself and like become a chameleon in different venues. It's super good.
I've heard great things about that one.
All right, we've kept you long enough. But as usual, we never wanted to end.
We never wanted to end. But thank you so much for being here, you guys. This was so much fun. Happy Book Pop Season 1.
Congratulations.
Grab another drink if you want. I don't know if it's storming. You may want to check the weather. You're welcome to hunker down here. We probably won't leave until like 8. And so you're welcome to stay and have another drink with us or shop. Hey, maybe she wants to include it. What if I say something funny, Pete? I'm really used to standing with a microphone in my hand, so it's just natural. But seriously, we're open for business, so you can buy books, you can have a drink, you can just chat with us, and thanks for coming.
Yay, thanks, guys. You can find all these titles and more at lakecitybooks/bookpop. You can listen to Book Pop on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and at Speak.Studio/bookpop. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and review. For a behind-the-scenes look, find us on YouTube at Book Pop the Podcast. Comment on today's episode by sending us an email at bookpoppodcast@gmail.com or find us on Instagram at Book Pop the Podcast.